We're going to be talking about user flows today. So, what are user flows? I see this question thrown around a bunch, and people always say they're working on them, but never really present them at all. So, what are they? Well, user flow is essentially a series of steps like we have illustrated over here. And it is a series of steps a user takes to achieve a meaningful goal. So why do we use them? Well, you may be thinking, these are wireframes. Are these like some part of our sketches? Well, they are used to communicate the intended flow of our user through various pages and actions in an app or website. So how do we make them? Well, your flow should include a name, steps, users, and a description of what happens at each step. So I really like this quote. But Ryan Singer from Basecamp created a great shorthand for user flows, and he actually called them UI. It's basically what the user sees and then what they do. And then the next step is what the user sees next and what they are going to do next. It's really simple, but ultimately user flows are just another method that designers are going to use. To define their products, experience, websites, etc. But wait, it isn't just another method. It's not just like site maps, or it's not just the same as just sketching. They have the ability to define sections of something abstract or technical from the perspective of the user. The most important thing about user flows is that the outline, the goal your user achieves are by completing. So here's an example. This is very basic user flow. Step 1, a user goes to a welcome screen. Step 2, they use a social login. Maybe step 3, and they get instant access to the product. That is as simple as it gets. So why do they help? You may be asking. Well, they are the best way to solve the issue of communicating the way we want our products to work and the way users interact with our products. They also help us think about our product and the users who interact with it in 3 simple questions. What is the goal of this thing? So we want them to register for the product in this example. Who is doing it? Well, a general user who is external from the product is doing this right now. And how do they do it? Well, they go to the welcome screen. They use a social login and they get instant access to the product. Let's take a look at the process in a bit more detail. Before we begin, we need structure. We need foundation. Gone are the days of creating these massive user flows that are sprawling all over the place. And they really lead nowhere, and they're hard to, just comprehend if you're not the person who created. So step one is, what is the purpose of your user flow? You really need to name your flow. It's as simple as that. Give it a name that describes its purpose. That is the goal the user achieves by completing the steps. And surprisingly, people often miss this step to right here. Despite popular belief, user flows go in one direction. You don't want to be going all over the place. Limit your decision points in each flow so you can avoid crazy, huge sitemaps and huge prototypes. It's okay to have multiple decision points, like what we see here. And multiple prototypes and a sitemap. We'll get into that later. But when we want to convey a distinct interaction, user flows work best. That's the big difference. And why is this the case? Well, they tell a story, and it's far easier for anyone to remember than a large product map or a series of cards in whatever tool you're using, like JIRA or GitHub issues, etc. The third piece of the process is they represent a complete task to ensure that your product is organized. The scope of each flow should be a single task or a goal for your user. You shouldn't be having massive, you shouldn't have massive user flows to have like three or four different flows. You really want to just hone in on like maybe one or two. Maybe there's a successful and unsuccessful path over here. And ultimately, that's going to be maybe something like you've applied for something and you didn't get accepted. So remember, keep those user flows concise. If they are too short, then you fail to tell a story. And if you are too long, and they lose their attention. Remember, you use Flows should be the clearest model of your product, and you can do that if you follow the rules I just laid out. I know explain what user flows are, but I really want to get into some details about the things you should do and things that you shouldn't do. So let's start. User flows show the purpose of what you're trying to create. So don't do this. Don't be vague. Vague user flows and names hide potential complexity and really doesn't communicate enough. So back to the viewer. Instead, let's move up over to here. Instead, you should use more descriptive names, like add user payment detail in comparison to just profile or something like that. Organize them into also separate flows if you need to. If you have something that's a little bit more complex by naming your flows, you're able to design from the user's perspective, and you can split goals based off their goals. Let's go over to you over here. I see this a bunch, especially from junior designers. Your flow should always go in one direction, basically. So don't do this when you have these flows that are prowling. I mentioned this in the past, but confusing flow maps are the absolute worst. These work as a good sitemap or to show the way the navigation works in your product. But ultimately, these aren't essentially what a user flow is. Instead, you should do this. Split them into distinct flows and categorize. Well, let's move on to the next one. Here it is. A very important part of a user flow is its details. Don't do this. Don't add in useless information and don't miss the key information. We need to know the details the user needs to take to complete a task and to the actions. Instead, let's take a look at a better example. This is what you should do. Add the right amount of detail outlining each step and goal. This way, anyone can read and understand your flow. So these are the do's and don'ts of creating user flows. If you follow them to a T, you should be good to go.